And it's a little bit improvised, I have to say, because when you start the vote, you don't know what will be the result. But I can assure you that in front of you is a very, very proud, a little bit tired, but a very, very proud chair. I think you all remember when we started off. It was not an easy start. We had some differences between different political groups, what we should do with the inquiry committee. But in the time that we had all these hearings, we had 47 hearings in 1 year time, we became a very tight, well-functioning team in that committee, and we had very strong coordinators and two very good rapporteurs. And I'm not saying that just for the sake of it. I've seen them doing their work. I've seen them made a lot of compromises. And so we had an extremely successful vote today. This is a report that cannot be ignored, neither by the Commission nor by the Council. I know this isn't law yet, or this doesn't make the change at itself. But I've seen, as the chair of this committee, together with everybody in that committee, that we already had a quite good of an impact. Think about the type approval regulation. So this is not the end of this committee. We have a very good report, and I give the floor to the two rapporteurs to enlighten all the issues. But this is not the end. We will make sure that our conclusion and especially our recommendations will be met by Council and Commission. The Parliament can do that. I have the full trust. But I don't want to go into the details. I first give the floor to Mr. Gieske and then to Gerben-Jan Gerbrandy, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the nice introduction. And it's of course not natural that the rapporteur of the EPP group gets such nice compliments from our S&D chair. So I'm very happy with his warm words. But I think really that indeed we did a good job in this. Ms. Van Brempt announced that the start was not easy, because always if you have these inquiry committees, it's a problem that there might be a witch hunt against persons, against industry, against whatever. But finally, and this shows perhaps the overwhelming majority of different groups, we worked together, worked hard on compromises, and I think we draw the right conclusions, because this was to be seen yet when we worked on the factual part. We had, I think, 47 hearings, yes. 23, we had commissioners, former ministers. We worked really hard, and we were not in a kind working on ideologies. We really worked on the point, and I think now we have a very good starting point with this vote in the EMIS committee. Of course, we still need the confirmation by the Parliament from our 751 colleagues, but 45 of them were already in the EMIS committee, and as a result of the vote today show, we have huge support by the different groups. I think we draw the right conclusions. We will move forward, and many things went wrong at Commission's level, at Member States level. Industry did many things wrong. Many car manufacturers did something which was perhaps illegal or not direct illegal. They took the loophole of the legislation, and this was a pity. I think we draw the right conclusions. We will work forward with RDE testing and with real enforcement of European law. If there is an agency to do it or not, today in our committee there was quite a close majority for an EU agency with 23 to 21. There are other committees, they vote against the agency. I think this is not the case. This is not important. If it is an agency, if it is a platform or something, I think the thing that we invent has to work. So we need to guarantee that this institution has the power to enforce the law. This is the problem we had. We had the rule, but we have no enforcement. And so if we create a new body, it's not necessary to have the 28th agency, but it's necessary to have an agency or a platform that has the power to really do the enforcement and do the oversight on existing law. This is my first remark. I'm perhaps not so proud as Ms. Van Brempt, but I'm a little bit proud of the result, and if we have the confirmation in the plenary, I'm even prouder than Ms. Van Brempt.
Voilà.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jens. You were a great co-rapporteur to work together with. First of all, thank you for being here in such large numbers. It's good to see so many of you because this is a very important report. Because one of the main conclusions is that Dieselgate could have been avoided if member states and the European Commission had simply followed the European law. And that is a quite painful conclusion, of course, because we are lawmakers, and if the law was followed as it was supposed to be followed, then we would not have ended up with a Dieselgate scandal. And let's realize ourselves that the biggest victims of this scandal are not Volkswagen or Volkswagen owners, the car owners. No, it's the people who live in the streets where all these cars drive by and where they emit 20, 30, 40 times the legal limits. I think that is the biggest scandal of all. We have found clear cases of contravention, which is the strongest condemnation that we have in an inquiry committee, by member states. We even name a few member states. One of the amendments adopted today, we named the member states that deliberately tried to slow down, for instance, the development of the new test, the real driving emission test. So very clear signals of contravention and also maladministration by member states. But we have also found clear cases of maladministration by the European Commission. Not taking the signals that came from the Joint Research Centre about a possible use of defeat devices seriously, not taking seriously the role of guardian of the treaty to check whether the member states are implementing legislation in the right way, and certainly not doing what the Commission was supposed to do, that was as quickly as possible develop a new test cycle in order to replace the old NEDC test that was already outdated at the moment that the legislation in 2007 came into effect. So a few very clear conclusions. Sometimes, unfortunately, you need a crisis to get improvements. What I see happening within the car industry is encouraging. And I don't talk about their general attitude towards the diesel scandal, but their internal decisions to swift R&D investments from, let's say, old diesel technology into the car of the future, electric and other non-emitting vehicles. And I think if you just look at Volkswagen, the investment decisions that have been taken since the scandal broke out in September 2015 are quite encouraging. That doesn't mean that the general attitude of both industry and member states at European level vis-à-vis Dieselgate is something to be proud of. It was for me, one of the strongest statements during the hearings 3 weeks ago by Commissioner Biankowska, where she clearly stated that both member states and industry have not changed their attitude towards Dieselgate since the scandal broke in September 2015. And that is quite something to hear. So I seriously call upon both industry but also the member states to change their attitude and to realize that giving the European level a much stronger oversight on type approval is the only way forward to avoid a next scandal like this one in the future. So on the 29th of May, the Council will discuss the new type approval decision, and I hope that they will be as wise as this Parliament is in order to give much stronger European oversight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For the questions, please use the microphone, just this remark. Please.
Hello, this is Anka from Politico. You just mentioned congratulations, by the way, on your report. You just mentioned the comments from Commissioner Biankowska during the last hearing, where she said that nothing has really changed in the way car makers and even national authorities deal with issues like Dieselgate scandal. Also, your work is not binding. The report and the recommendations you voted on today is not binding. Are you worried that after a while, when the cameras turn off, everything will slip back to the way it was and industry will go back to behaving the way it does? Thank you.
I think we should be worried all of the time. We couldn't have predicted, not the Parliament or the public opinion, the scandal at itself. I think we as a Parliament took the lessons. We have a very good and strong report. We should not be at ease. I think what Gerben-Jan said about the Council's position on the type approval, that's one of the first tests. But at the same time, I see that a lot of things has changed already. If you see the strength of the very important mayors that we have, think of the mayors in Paris and in London, but also of smaller cities in the Netherlands and in Belgium and other member states, that's the countries I know best, then you see that there will be a lot of strength coming from these cities. They are faced with the pollution of the fact that the cars are not meeting up to the final goals. So you will see a lot of pressure, and in that sense, I'm not at ease. I think that's why I said in my introduction, the work of the committee is not finished. The committee is finished, but every of the members in this committee are member of TRAN, ITRE, IMCO, ENVI, and even other committees that might be very helpful. So we've learned a lot. I personally learned a lot. And although we're not that powerful inquiry committee as in national member states, you see that we got all these people in our committee. They did give their statement. So there is a life before the scandal, and there is a life before the inquiry committee, and there will be another life after that. But it's up to the strength of the Parliament and the Commission, because if there's one institution that actually really changed during the course of our inquiry committee, then it is the Commission. And Bieńkowska, as a commissioner, she has a lot of work to do. She will face the support of this Parliament, but I see a change in the Commission. In the Council, we're not yet there, but we know the Council is always a difficulty.
Yes, if I may add to that, this is not just a regular non-binding resolution by Parliament. This is the final report of an inquiry committee, the first inquiry committee in 10 years, and that, I think, says enough. In one of the amendments, the compromise amendments adopted today on the recommendations, we asked the Commission to come forward within 18 months with a report in which the Commission is forced to see what they can do with our recommendations. And I think that is very important, because we have a few strong recommendations. They still have to go through plenary. The conclusions are now ready, but the recommendations still have to go to plenary. But I'm very confident that they will stay alive in plenary. That, for instance, we believe that it's wrong that one Directorate General was responsible for air quality, and the other Directorate General was responsible for the car emissions. That should be in one hand, because we have seen that there were huge fights within the Commission with different interests. So I not only hope, but I'm convinced that the Commission will seriously look into this and will act accordingly.
Hi. You've seen my face before.
Yes.
All right.
You're #1 fan, no?
Also, congratulations and good job. Some specific questions for Mr. Gieske. The EPP voted against the amendment on lobby influence and constant pressure from the industry relating to RDE delay. Can you explain why EPP voted against? That's my first question. My second, can you say something about the amendment that would have mentioned the role of Mr. Tajani? And thirdly, since the EPP originally was against setting up this committee, looking back this year, in hindsight, do you feel differently about that? Do you think that now it was useful that there was this committee? And perhaps Ms. Van Brempt, even though you didn't vote,
I would have voted.
You would have voted. Would you have also abstained from voting on Mr. Tajani's role or not? And can you maybe elaborate a little bit on your thoughts on that? And Mr. Gerbrandy wants to add anything, please do.
Yes. On the lobby influence, it's always a narrative that there was over-representation of lobbyists. But as we see the process, the Commission is obliged to have consultation, and of course by the car manufacturers. If it becomes very technical, it is really necessary to have the know-how of the industry. It is not always influencing and doing the hidden job, but coming to a rational result, it is necessary to have this influence on board. And I do not think that the story of always this overrepresentation of lobbying is the right to talk. Civil society, NGOs, they are all invited to take part in the consultation, and they do. I think it has to be balanced, and this is the EPP approach. To your second question concerning certain politicians taking part, doing something, this was not our EPP approach to play this blame game and saying, well, we need 4 invitations for Mr. Verheugen to come, and this is he is really fighting against our work. It's not mentioning of Verheugen or Tajani or Biankowska or others. It's the European Commission as entity who is responsible, and if we find something that has to be improved, we can really make that point, but not trying to have a personal responsibility. And I think finally it's good not to mention certain former commissioners, because then we have this blame game, and some guys are talking of Verheugen, others are talking of Mr. Liikanen or Ms. Malmström, but this is not useful to have this discussion. Then it's more a theater. And our approach was really to gather facts and evidence and draw the right conclusions. We are still on that way, and when this committee started, we had fears that this will be the theater, but after 12 months and really, as I pointed out in my introductory statement, with the factual part, we really let this apart and worked together on the real conclusions and not on this blame game. So finally, we are happy with the result. Of course, having in mind that we still have to prepare the recommendations for the plenary, and if we then restart the blame game, I think you get a different answer from me. Thank you.
Well, to answer your question, first of all, on not voting, I would have voted the 2 reports with a lot of enthusiasm. I didn't, because my group was fully present, and I have to say it was good that I had all my focus and attention on the vote. And I can assure you that my respect for Commission chairs and the chair of the Parliament has risen, because it's not easy to chair a vote like that. And I will always raise my hand the next time I'm just in the chamber to vote. That's the reason why I didn't vote, but full support. I would have followed the group line of the S&D on the abstention of the amendment that you are referring to. The main reason is that the Commission is a college, and the report is really very strong on the responsibility of the former Commission on all these issues, really very strong. I engage you and I ask you, take your time to read it. The word maladministration is often used to make sure that nobody can say it wasn't me. But it is a college, and of course the most of the responsibility in this file lies with the commissioner responsible for, at that time, enterprise, but there's also the responsibility of the Commissioner of Environment and of other commissioners involved. So if you have to start the game like that, and in that sense I agree with Mr. Gieske, you start a sort of political game, because every of these figures have a political background. They come from a certain political party, but be assured, the committee is united on the fact that we pinpoint down the responsibility of the former Commission of not having done what they should have done. If they would have done their work much better, we wouldn't be able to sort of prevent the use of defeat devices, but it would have been Europe who would have discovered it. So I think that's very clear in the report.
I may use the opportunity to add something. First of all, Peter, congratulations and compliments to you as well. You were the most active journalist during the last 12 months. I think that the most important thing is that we adopted with 40 votes in favor, 2 against and 2 abstentions, a very, very strong critical report on the Dieselgate scandal. That is the final result of this committee. And yes, I'm the first to admit that the start of the process was not always easy. Some groups were more enthusiastic about this inquiry committee than others. But I've seen that attitude changing during the process. At the moment that you hear from the witnesses that we invited what happened really behind the closed doors, within industry, within member states, within the Commission, I saw that our inquiry committee was uniting and getting together behind the report that we just adopted. I think that is a victory for democracy and European democracy. What we shouldn't do now is now look at amendment this or that. Did you vote in favor or against? Let's focus on the main conclusions. Let's focus on the huge criticism towards member states. I mean, my opening statement this afternoon was Dieselgate should have been avoided if the member states and the Commission would have followed the European law. That is quite something. So let's point the fingers where they should point at and not look at the internal process, because the kitchen is not always the cleanest place, but in the end, you have a wonderful dish on your plate, and that is what we, I believe, have cooked in the last 12 months.
Thank you. Any other questions, maybe?
Excellent picture.
No? So, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, rapporteurs.
Thank you very much.
One more, please.
Please.
Hi, Pascal from Agence Europe. The Tajani question has been already asked, so no problem. No, another question, it's not directly linked to the vote of today, but it's regarding the IMCO report on type approval. I wanted to know your point of view as co-rapporteurs and president of the EMIS committee regarding the report that's been adopted within the IMCO from Daniel Dalton. And my question is, would you like to, because I have heard that there was plenty of criticism regarding the calendar, that the EMIS committee arrived after the vote of IMCO committee. Are you tending to influence the vote in the plenary session on the IMCO report? Thank you.
Well, I think we already did. I remember when we started off the inquiry committee, and a little later, the Commissioner came up with their revision of the type approval, and it went into the IMCO committee. We immediately started looking at their timetable. And at that moment, I remember that as if the day of yesterday, I met with the chair, and she said, no, you cannot ask us to sort of get these timetables together. But we pushed and we wrote letters and we expressed in a letter our on the content what we thought should be into the IMCO report. And because it's a very important but a very technical report as well, they took their time. And now we are at the end and we have the possibility to vote in the same plenary session in Strasbourg, our report and the type approval report. And there is no reason why we should not do that, because the Council will have their position in somewhere in May. So we have the time, and I think it's a very good and a very important message to the outside world that we not just have the conclusions and the recommendation of the EMIS, but also the position of the Parliament on the type approval and the market surveillance. And as Mr. Gieske said, it was a tight vote on the agency. I'm very much in favour personally, but it was a tight vote. So it's not yet, we're not yet there in the plenary. It will be a political battle. It's good that we pinpoint them down together in that session. So it would be good for also for the Parliament to take up the responsibility and the accountability of what we did in EMIS to put these two reports together. But of course, it's up to at the end, it's up to the chairs of the political groups to decide on the agenda. But voila, now you have the opinion of the chair.
Yes, if I may add something. We don't live in isolated silos. 2 of the 4 full members of ALDE in the inquiry committee are also members of the IMCO committee. So there's a lot of overlap, of course, and we have influenced it a lot. And you shouldn't forget that the new type approval legislation is so important for us that waiting for the inquiry committee to finish its investigation would not have been the right signal to the importance of a new type approval legislation. I'm very confident that in the end we will have a strong Parliament's position. I'm much more concerned about the Council. That's why I called upon the Member States on the 29th of May to do what is necessary and not to let what I would call stupid ideology stand in the way of pragmatism and cleaning the air of European cities. Because I think that we all as politicians, we should act in the clear interest of our citizens, and that is not by saying Europe should not touch our national type approval system. No, that is that you have a level playing field in Europe, that the cars are tested in the right way, and that they emit in the streets the same as they are emitting during a test cycle. And I think that is the main message to the member states. Please do not follow your narrow-minded short-term ideology, but think about European citizens and their interests.
Okay.
If I may, I agree. As you know, in EMIS we work on consensus basis, and the procedures points made by the chair and by my co-rapporteur, I totally agree. We should really align the timetables from IMCO and EMIS. Otherwise, we would have the situation to vote on such important things like type approval in March, and the EMIS results will be voted in April, which is not good for our credibility. So we really should a one-stop end and then vote together. This is the right that we are unified in this House, which sends the right signal to the Council as well.
That's clear.